If you have a show that you know doesn't have viewers, and it's tough to get them back in the door, the ones that were there before, what do you do? Because obviously, from reading these lineups, especially Collision, it's a lot of stuff that ended up referenced on Dynamite or comes off Dynamite. And Dynamite spends a lot of time promoting Rampage and Collision. It doesn't seem to help. What do you do? I mean, you have this B show. Should you have Dynamite kind of exist on its own? Like, what would you do if you have a B show that people don't watch?
Well, they've got a C show that people don't watch and a B show that a lot of people don't watch. And they're at least getting rid of Rampage, and that's a good idea. And if they, what do they think they're going to do if they sell somebody else a new program? How is it going to be better than Rampage? With Saturday and Wednesday, they had an idea of making different talents. So if you like, the House of Black, then you got to watch on Saturday night or whatever. But obviously, they're not deep enough in talent. They've got plenty of guys and girls, but nobody's over because of Tony's insistence on booking to the smallest common denominator and throwing everything out there. Slow it fucking down. Because you're just wasting your time having Sockface rattle off a bunch of endless matches with a graphic on Wednesday that you're going to see on Saturday, because who can keep track of all this shit anyway? The smallest group that's going to even take more notes than I do. So slow down, calm down, concentrate on getting your top talent on both shows, and have things that happen on Wednesday continue on Saturday, and then branch off to the next Wednesday where they're going to be resolved potentially. Fewer guys that people can focus on in shit that matters and that interests them, interacting with the other talent. And then, eliminate the fucking bottom 75 fucking goofs that nobody gives a shit about that pop up every once in a while, and focus on who you think might draw you some ratings or some interest, and don't have them all hitting each other with sledgehammers and cricket bats every goddamn week. Because it's just endless. It's repetition over and over with angles and chaos, and every match ends in the heels, whether they win or lose, they're going to jump the baby faces. Every interview, somebody's going to run out and get in a fight. Every backstage interview, somebody's going to run from 6 feet away that the person being interviewed never saw and blindside them. How many people have been run over with cars in this company? It's just, you can't, it means nothing because it's just miscellaneous chaos. So that's the problem. It's not the time slots or even the roster. The roster is too big, but the people that mean something don't mean anything.
What do you think of anything? And again, we'll talk Dynamite ratings in a second. What can be done to freshen up the show? You have a reality there that you're not going to draw a lot of fans to a Dynamite for the most part. Every now and then you'll get when they get like 4,000 people or 6,000 people. But the crowds are going down, especially when they return to a market. The crowds go down. We just saw in NXT, there are small rooms you can get and make them look good. But the biggest thing that happened to WWE was Lee Fitting coming on as executive producer, and everyone who raved for years about WWE production realized how behind the times the top end of the production was.
Yeah.
Everything looked good, but it could look a whole lot better and connect a whole lot better. Feel just live all the time. AEW looks the same, even though, they have a different, Michael Mansouri came in after the fact. Right, it opened with Keith Mitchell directing it, I think, right?
Yeah, Keith retired from what I understand, and whoever this other fellow is that was working for Kevin Dunn. So now WWE's moved away from Kevin Dunn. They look like Steven Spielberg, and I mean, the show looks professional, AEW, but
I'm not
There's
saying it
only
doesn't. I mean, they make some
no.
puzzling production errors at times,
Well,
but
yeah, but there's only so much you can do with a a 10 or 12 or 15 or 20,000 seat building with 2 or 3 or 4,000 people in it. And otherwise, as you mentioned, maybe this guy is good for government work, as they say, but maybe they need somebody else with a more, if you're making an independent film and you haven't got $100 million Hollywood blockbuster budget, don't put a scene in your movie where you're trying to part the Red Sea unless you can pay for it. Their indie movies can be artful and can look fucking great and can, change the game or whatever. But if you don't have the budget for the multi-million-dollar CGI special effects or whatever, don't try to make that movie. If you're not able to put 20,000 people in a 20,000 seat building, don't try to do that. Try to give your thing a look that fits either your budget or your resources or your ability to draw people. So yeah, smaller buildings with an underground look and some cool avant-garde cinematographer that can give them a different look, that could help out.
I don't even think it has to be underground. It just has to look like there's energy.
Well, I say underground, like, the
Like Dabocado.
No, I'm not talking about raw underground. I'm talking about like a fucking underground indie record label that does really good music, or, Dolph Ramser, somebody like that, or whatever.
Dabocado.
Dabocado. That makes it look different, but you've still got to have the content, the substance. You can't just have a bunch of miscellaneous guys in Halloween masks running around doing cartwheels. You have to have something that people really want to watch because it's that person, it's that star, it's that angle, it's that program between two guys or whatever. And the booking is not going to change because Tony can't change.
And they still have fans that love them. And you know that the ticket sales really don't matter. If they mattered, maybe they would care more and pay closer attention to marketing, promoting, selling tickets, promoting shows that sell tickets. They care how many people buy tickets for the pay-per-view. But Dynamite, like you said, they're running these big buildings. Why not own it? We're doing an AEW theater tour for the next 12 weeks. Small buildings, exclusive tickets, the most exclusive ticket in wrestling. And every building has a different look. And customize it. If you get 750 of your most vocal fans in there, and it's a small building, you can make it look good. And make it look cool, just something. Instead of just these giant dead buildings. And everything feels dead. And there's some fans there that really like it. But when you're like the lone person screaming in a big empty building, it doesn't help the broadcast at all.
It's no, when the announcers have to go into the golf voice because they don't want to be heard over the silent crowd. And even Uncle Dave this week wrote an open letter to Tony Khan in the Observer, and disguised it as reporting on the situation, but it's a letter to Tony about Tony needs to. It's not Dave, it's Tony. Tony needs to do some things in this relationship for it to be able to work. Because even Uncle Dave is admitting the things that we have been saying. Of course, he'll still
for a while.
He'll put a paragraph in there like, now Tony has still made more money than God and he's a genius, but, and then he goes 4 more paragraphs about everything that's wrong, that we've been talking about is wrong, that they can't make stars, that their ticket buying patrons are dwindling.
Hey, can I ask you about that? The idea that throughout wrestling history, what are your thoughts on the first sign that, and obviously it's a different world now because of ratings, but the first sign that there's a problem is always ticket sales.
Yeah.
And it's been clear that AEW has a company-wide problem for a while. Again, I think sometimes they're able to pretend it's not there. Not everything's Wembley, but, they're about to get like 7,000 people for their pay-per-view in Washington. That's a pretty good crowd. Maybe it'll be 8,000. But then they're going to go back to like 1,500. And who knows how many of those are comps for Dynamite in a big NBA arena. So they kind of like lie to themselves that, look, we're doing great. Wembley. And then like the rest of the year, all those crowds together equal Wembley. Maybe. 52 weeks.
Well,
in a
no,
year,
this year they'll more than equal Wembley.
Yeah, this year they will.
Well, that's the thing. It is true. Ticket sales were always, before pay-per-view was even a thing. Ticket sales were your lifeblood because that's how you made your money. But you could tell when interest in the product was going down because the most dedicated fans, the ones who usually came and bought tickets every week or every 2 weeks or every month, whatever the schedule was, they started slacking off. Nobody paid attention to the ratings because it was all local ratings anyway, as long as your local station was happy. But the ratings usually, even till the end of a territory, were still massive by today's numbers especially, but even massive by those numbers because, as Teeny Jarrett used to say, wrestling fans are creatures of habit. So they would continue to watch the TV show because it's what they did every week and they had for years and years. And they wanted to see who was going to be coming to the Mid-South Coliseum Monday night or whatever. But there were periods where either the talent or the angles or whatever would cool off and your houses would be down until you could find a new guy to come in, a new angle to shoot, a new program to start with your top guys that would turn things around. You didn't really lose the TV audience until the place was ready to go under. And that didn't happen all that much. Think about how many territories actually, without being in a war or whatever, just suddenly went out of business in the territory days. Not that fucking many.
Not too many.
And usually it was because Sheik and Bruiser got too old and all their friends got too old or something like that. So the fans always watch the TV. But that's the thing. They can't keep these people watching the TV. But the ticket sales are the first indication, because if you can't get your most dedicated fans to go and see you live, then the average person that has a life and kids and don't really care and don't have time ain't going to sit down and stop everything to watch the TV show.
See, that's their biggest problem. There are a lot of fans who were dismissed, who didn't really like AEW, who really spoke for a larger fan base, who don't talk to wrestling fans online or anything. People ignored a lot of the things. And the first thing that happened was they burned off whatever you want to call them, casual fans, WWE fans willing to check out something else.
Because WWE sucked for a while and they were ready to see something new. And even with a few familiar names, they'd give it a chance.
That started things. The company drama, which didn't look good for AEW. I mean, look at the trajectory of the company since they aired the CM Punk Jack Perry footage. It's astounding. The crowds, the ratings, everything went down.
And again, there was two possible reactions from the people who knew what the whole story was and were on the internet and knew what was going on. They just thought, well, this is the stupidest thing they've ever done to show this. And for the people who didn't know, they didn't do anything to explain it, and it was equally as stupid.
And now they started losing some of their fans, some of the people who really loved the company and still buy a pay-per-view. They started saying, you know, there are other things I could do on this night. And even their YouTube numbers aren't as strong as they used to be. It's the same thing. It's not wrestling. It's this brand of wrestling and the booking. There's only so much of an audience for big matchups, not based around feuds or titles or reason.
Well, besides that, can we say something out loud here that nobody else is saying? Because Dave will say it, even when he's saying, well, they need to create stars and they need to promote the towns better and they did this and that. They have great matches. No, they don't have great matches. Then nobody, even the WWE right now, they ain't having a ton of great matches. It's there and the stars are over and they're on a roll, but the idea that AEW is just putting together great matches, but that alone won't. That is assuming that any knucklehead thinks that Hologram and the Cosmic Commander, what's his name? Whoever the General Zod,
No.
whatever his
You
fucking
remember
name
the Cosmic
is.
Commander of Wrestling? He was a manager in the Indies, Cosmo.
Okay, well, Kramer, whoever. The point is, these ain't great matches. These are not great wrestling matches. These are goddamn indie-rific clown show goddamn matches. And that's a big thing also, because most people, even that watch wrestling programs, don't want to see two miscellaneous children doing gymnastics. It's just not a thing that a lot of people are going to want to look at. So these are not great wrestling matches. They're great exhibitions of tumbling or whatever the fuck they are. Or they call great matches where the guy stuck the fucking hypodermic needle in the other guy's face. Sorry, that's not a great match.
We don't have an answer to this, just thinking out loud as Swami barks at the mailman. But Ricochet comes over here, and he has that match with Ospreay. And it's a rematch of matches they had on the Indies that fans went crazy for. We saw the memes. You remember the clips that were going around, 8 years ago, 9 years ago?
Yeah, it stunk then, and it was worse when they're 8 years older, but go ahead.
But I guess the AEW core audience is the fan that went crazy for that and wanted more of that style of wrestling. If you're a WWE fan who only knows Ricochet from WWE or NXT, and all of a sudden you're watching this and he's not having a match that in any way is competitive, it's more just, it's my turn to do something, now you do something. I could do what you do what I do. It's a show. And again, it's not a dream match to an audience that doesn't give a shit about what happens on the Indies or what happened 8 years ago.
Yeah, no, the Rock versus Roman Reigns is a dream match, right? These are nightmare matches. So that's the point, is that they're saying, well, great matches alone. Well, no, a lot of these are not great matches. You just think they are because this is the kind of wrestling you've been watching, and you've apparently never seen the good shit. And that's a small group of people. So I wish everybody would quit saying great matches alone. Some great matches would help. They had Punk and MJF. They had FTR and Robinson and Switchblade or Light Switch or whatever is. I can't even remember what I call him now.
Bing Bang.
Bing Bang. Walla Walla Bing Bang. They have some great matches, but the people, or the matches that most of these people say are great matches, are not great fucking matches. They're rotten goddamn bullshit indie matches.
Well, look at the Bucks.
And that's what's keeping them from growing.
Look at the Bucks is the greatest example of that, because those are the matches that Dave's loved more than anything. They have, 5-star matches up to gazoo for matches that were just average.
The 13-time tag team of the year in the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
But you could talk about how great you think their matches are. The crowds now are getting to the level Ring of Honor was when they left Ring of Honor and took everyone and started AEW with Tony Khan. So how great are their matches? No one's paying to see them.
Besides that, I've always used this example going back 25 years because it's always been true. And I used it with the WWF, saying, okay, when we were in the NWA trying to fight the war in the 80s, okay, we're the Boston Celtics, they're the Harlem Globetrotters. We're serious about this. This is sport to us. It's a show up there. It's entertainment wrestling. That was the delineation. But the same thing is true. If the Harlem Globetrotters were still a goddamn major deal today, if Meadowlark Lemon and Curly Neal were still alive, you still wouldn't go to see them if they were in town 45 times, right? Because it's a show. You laugh. You like the wizardry of the passes, the dribbling routine, the bucket. Is it going to be water or confetti? But the basketball fans that are in love with their team and want to see basketball as a sport, in Boston, they'll go 45 times a year or however many home games they play. Because it's always different and you don't know what's going to happen and you want to see your guy win. It's not just about watching people put on a fucking performance of gymnastics or simulated violence or How many times can you watch somebody go through a fucking table?
Well, there's the thing too. We just saw Punk versus McIntyre. If something like that happened in AEW, it more than likely wouldn't be the only match on the show that was that violent.
Exactly.
This took months to get to this match. And I think with AEW, there's a lot of matches that are thrown together, and there's never a road to get there that people invest in or care about. And you can't have any more feuds about friendship or hugging or you're my friend. I thought you were my friend. What happened? It's a continuing problem that doesn't get better, and it's not going to. And by the way, I'll throw this out there, throw this at you, and then we'll move on with the ratings. In terms of goodwill, at what point does it become good for Tony Khan to announce that he's stepping down as head of creative?
Oh boy, I'd love to hear that next week, because our job would be a lot easier.
At what point will something like that cause more people to check out the show? Because he's training the audience to not care. And it's now affecting his most hardcore base. And they're starting to hemorrhage. They're starting to hemorrhage the key demo.
See, here's the thing. I don't think that would really help at any point, because for the people who are most dedicated to the company and are going to watch or whatever, I think they still like Tony. And I think they still think that, oh yeah, he's a great booker. I'd do the exact same thing, which is the problem. All the fucking marks on the internet would do the exact same thing. But for the fans who either are like, this show sucks, or we don't know what's going on, or we're not going to watch anymore, or we've lost our enthusiasm. If Tony Khan said, well, I'm going to quit and I'm going to let somebody else book, would it make any difference to them? Because do they really understand why the show is not appealing to them anymore? Why they don't understand anything? Do they think it's the wrestlers' fault? Or we don't like those wrestlers, or whatever? Or are they smart enough to the business to know, no, this is Tony Khan telling these people to do this shit, or letting them do whatever the fuck they come up with for an idea without bothering to, edit it or make sure it's any good? So would it really make any difference if Tony said, I'm getting somebody else? And then who would he get?
Well, that's a separate problem.
Who would he get? Will Wheaton? Jennifer Pepperday? Who's he going to get?
I don't think those would be good suggestions.